This video is going to be all about workplace pensions, something I get questions on very frequently. I'm going to run through a bit about pensions, what they are, the different types, and also how I've set up my workplace pension, how it works, what I invest into, and hopefully throughout that I'll sprinkle in some sort of tips and tricks and other stuff you need to know, and then hopefully if you have a workplace pension, that can help you then optimize it and essentially set it up in the best way possible for yourself. My name is Ryan and welcome back to Making Money Simple. Feel free to subscribe to this YouTube channel here. I try to upload weekly personal finance and investing videos. I'm also on all of the other social media, so drop me a follow on those, and I have a few digital products available. My most recent one being the Stop Waiting, Start Investing, brand new, top of the range, first class rocket ebook, so feel free to check that out. I've also got some pensions chat in that if you want something written, but in this video we're going to be going through workplace pensions as I mentioned. So let's start with some of the basic things that you need to know when it comes to pensions. The first thing to note is that a pension is just a type of account. So I run through this a lot on my Instagram and also extensively in the ebook. There's 60 plus pages on this, but essentially 3 stages to invest. You first of all need to choose a platform, you second of all need to choose an account, and you third of all need to choose an actual investment that goes inside that account on the platform. So for example, with my stocks and shares ISA, I have my platform with Vanguard, the account is a stocks and shares ISA, and my investment is a global index fund. With my pension, as we're going to get into, my platform is Legal & General, the account is in a workplace pension, and then the investment is once again a global index fund, as I preach about global index funds quite a lot, and that is the approach that I personally follow. But what I'm trying to get across here is the pension is that sort of second stage, and it's just the type of account. So when people say, what returns can I expect from my pension, or my pension has increased by 20%, that's sort of wrong. It's actually the investment inside of the pension that has increased in value, or that has grown, or that is going to give you your return. So the pension is just the wrapper or the type of account. You then have investments that then go inside of that pension. So the investments could be stocks, ETFs, index funds, and so on and so forth. So that was the first thing I quickly wanted to point out.
But wait! There's more!
So when it comes to sort of then pensions, there's 4 steps that I always sort of say to people whenever they start talking to me about pensions and have questions. The first one, if you have a pension, you are an investor. As we mentioned, the pension is just a type of account, but if you're being auto-enrolled into a workplace pension, it is likely that money will be auto-investing into some sort of fund. So even if you don't realize it, you are an investor if you have a pension. Now, that money may be going into a fund which isn't optimal for you. It certainly wasn't for me, and I'm gonna get into that in a second. But the most important thing to realize here is if you have a pension, you are an investor, and that is your money, which is why it's so important to actually take control of it, understand what you're investing into, and don't just let it sit there. Don't leave it up by chance, because you may get a nasty surprise in 30 or 40 years time when you come to access it and it's not as much as you hoped it would be. So that was the first thing I wanted to get across. If you have a pension, you are an investor. It's important to realize that and start actually taking control of that money, taking an interest, understand who that money is with, what it's being invested into. The second thing I've got here is that you need to get access to your actual pension. This can be a bit difficult. For me personally, mine with Legal & General, I went directly to them and managed to get access. You may have to go through HR wherever you work, or whoever the right person is, but you need to try and get access to the actual workplace pension, whether that's through HR at your workplace or through the provider. Obviously, if you don't know who the provider is, you might have to try and find that out from HR or from a colleague and then go to the provider. But if the provider's not helping, then you may just need to go through HR and try and get your login details that way. Number 3, once you know you're an investor, you have the login details, you then need to actually log into your platform, your investment account, your pension, and see what is actually being invested into. I'm going to get into a bit more detail of my personal experience in a bit, but it's probably going to be auto-invested into something. It's probably a high fee fund. It may not be the best fund for you. Obviously, as we know, the lower your fees, the more money is compounding, the more money we end up in the long term. So I personally actually switched the fund that I was being invested into. So I'll get into that more in a second. That's also worth pointing out here that another important thing is to actually make sure your money is being invested. I think this is more common in America than in the UK, but I've heard stories where people have been contributing to a pension, but the money has just been sitting in cash in that pension rather than actually in investments. So once you have access to your pension, make sure that money is actually going into a fund or some sort of investment and not just sitting in cash. I've heard some awful stories where people have literally been contributing in America to their 401ks, which is similar to a pension, for decades, and not a penny, not a cent was invested, and they didn't realise till 20 years down the line, and then their money is probably actually lost out due to inflation, whereas that should have been invested and growing.
That's a lot of damage.
Point number 4 I want to make here is that you then need to try and actually lower your fees. So once you know you're an investor, you have access to your pension, you know what you're investing into, you found that out, you then want to actually try and lower your fees. And this is what I'm going to get into in a minute. But obviously when it comes to that 3-step process, you have the platform, which is step number 1, and then number 3 is the investment. So you could lower your fees in terms of the platform, which I'll get into, and you could also lower your fees in terms of your investment, which I'll get into. I've done the latter, so I lowered my fees in terms of the investment, in terms of the fund that I was investing into, but I've kept the platform the same. I'm still with Legal in General, but I'm going to run through both. That is a quick overview though of the 3-step process. Now the pension is number 2, and it's the account, and also there's sort of 4 steps that I normally highlight to people when they sort of ask me about pensions and I want to learn more. I've also realised it's got quite dark outside now, so sorry if the quality and the lighting isn't the best, the light's sort of on my face, but I'm now going to get into my actual workplace pension, my experience with it, how I've set mine up, how mine works, and hopefully this can then help you with your workplace pension. So, as I mentioned, mine is with Legal in General. With pension providers, it's a bit of a minefield. There seems to be so many pension providers. They all work slightly differently. There's NHS ones, there's Nest ones. I'm not completely clued up massively on all of them, but I'm talking about mine from a corporate point of view. So I work in finance in London for a corporate company, for a corporation. So I have a corporate pension, I guess is the best way to put it. My employer matches 6%. So the most important thing to say here is this is literally 100% free money. Whatever your employer matches up to, make sure you also match that, because it's literally free money. If my employer matched up to 10%, I would also match up to 10%. Unfortunately, they only do 6%, so I do 6% as well. But whatever your employer matches, just make sure you at least contribute that amount, because they will match that. So I contribute 6%, they then also contribute 6%, and it's 100% free money.
Easy money!
And that is one reason, this is one way how pensions really can outdo other types of accounts like stocks and shares ISAs or general investment accounts. The main downside is that it's inflexible. We can't access that money until we're 55, soon going to be increasing to 57, so we can't actually access that money. But in the meantime, between now and that sort of pension age, we're going to have double the amount of money compounding over the long term, growing for us, and that is literally the power of pensions in a nutshell. So mine's with Legal in General. I have a 6% employer match, so I have double the amount of money compounding over the long term. Unfortunately, there's a limited number of fund options available. But regardless, what I did was, once I got access to my provider, access to the platform, I then looked through and I managed to essentially switch the fund I was investing into from a high fee, sort of a life strategy, lifestyle fund, which was about 0.8%, all the way down to the lowest fee global fund I could find, or 0.23%. So just by doing that, I've literally reduced my fees by 75%, from 0.8 to 0.23.
Sometimes my genius is, it's almost frightening.
And that obviously doesn't sound like a huge impact, right? It's only 0.8 to 0.2-ish, it's a 0.6% difference, but it's a 75% decrease. And importantly, when we're going to be looking at compounding our wealth, I'm 24, I can't access that for say 33 years. Over that 33-year period, I'll chuck up like a graphic or something, but over that 33-year period, assuming the same rate of return, by reducing that fee by roughly 0.6%, I'm literally going to be putting tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, back into my pocket over the long term, which is why I've sort of emphasized earlier on with point number 4, it's so important where you can to try and lower your fees so there's more money compounding in your own pocket over the long term. So my Legal & General employer matched pension is now in a global fund. As I mentioned, there wasn't a huge amount of options available, but I essentially looked through the fund list and found the most diversified global fund and the lowest fee global fund I could find. And now it's this global fund, which is sort of a fund of a fund. It's 0.23%. I still prefer the FTSE Global All Cap instead of this fund, but I'm going to get onto shortly why I haven't actually changed my pension provider yet and continue using Legal & General instead of someone like Vanguard. But before I go on to that, I just want to say this is obviously where it once again can be a bit of a minefield. You're going to have to go onto your platform, whoever that's with. You're going to have to try and find the fund list, see which funds are available. You can sort of enter buzzwords. I mean, there may be literally hundreds, if not thousands, of funds available because there's so many around. You may need to go onto the search box and type in global or world or US or S&P, wherever you're sort of looking for technology, them sort of buzzwords to sort of narrow the search down. But this is when I guess you need to take a bit of time to sort of understand what the different funds are, what the best one for you is. Of course, the approach that I follow is to use global funds. I'm not a financial advisor, but that's what I use for both my stocks and shares ISA and my workplace pension. You need to have a think what is the best for you, and then essentially try and switch to that fund. And what you can do is, so what I did personally, when I then switched from that high fee fund to the low fee global fund, I switched all the money that I had currently invested over to that fund in one go, and I'd set it up so all my future investments now and still do go into that one global fund. Another thing I could have done, I could have actually split up my investments into multiple funds. I could have said 3 different funds, put 33% of the money in those 3 funds every month. I'm not interested in having multiple funds. One global fund is all I need. That's all I want, which is why I've set it up there to keep, once again, my approach simple, automated, passive, hands off. It's all taken out of my payslip automatically every month. And obviously this sort of simple path to wealth is what I try to preach through my YouTube videos, through Instagram, and through my Stop Waiting, Start Investing ebook, which recently launched. It's also getting increasingly darker now, so sorry if this video quality isn't the best. But the last thing I wanted to touch on was then actually changing your provider. So as I mentioned, step number 4, lowering your fees. You can try and lower your provider or the platform you're using, or you can lower your investment or the fund you're investing into. So I've touched on the fund already and how I lowered my fees by 75%. You can also lower the fees by using a different platform. So one option with a workplace pension is you can essentially periodically move the money from a workplace pension to a SIP, or essentially a private pension. Now, there's a few things to say here. Personally, I have not done this because with Legal & General and with my employer, I actually get a discount on the platform fee with Legal & General, so it works out cheaper to use a global fund and Legal & General rather than a global fund and Vanguard. So for now, I have my workplace pension with Legal & General because I'm paying lower fees. If I ever left the company or that discount changed, or just say I was paying a really high platform fee of say 0.5%, 1%, whatever it is, I would then actually take the decision to periodically move my money from my workplace pension to a SIP probably once or twice a year. It's now important to realise that there could be exit fees. So once again, I appreciate I've said this a lot and it's not ideal and it really does depend on your specific situation. Hopefully it is helping you out anyway, but you may need to see if there's any exit fees associated with your pension, with your provider. But if there isn't, or if they're very, very low, it could be worth, if you're paying a very high platform fee, to essentially move that money once or twice a year from your workplace pension to a SIP, which then has a lower fee. And that really does wrap up this workplace pension video. So I've sort of been through the 4 things you need to think about, and also how the pension is a type of account. I've then been through a lot of my own sort of personal experience and how I personally have set my workplace pension up with my employer match, how I sort of switched my fund to a lower fee global fund, and also hopefully gave you some ideas of how you can then sort of lower your provider fee or platform fee if you're paying a high fee, and also how you can lower your fund fee if you are paying a high fee for whatever fund you're investing into. With a pension, it is difficult, as I mentioned a few times, because of the range of options available, the different providers, the different investments. It really is just going to be a case of you sitting down one afternoon, maybe on a Saturday, getting access to your pension, seeing what it's being invested into, and try and lower the fees if possible. One sort of tip I do have here right at the end is, if you are struggling to find out the fees you're paying, simply just ask the provider, and this is exactly what I did. So I messaged Legal & General through their website saying, I have this 0.23% global fund, and I understand the platform fee to be this amount, so I think my total fees for using your service is going to be X. Is that correct? They then replied a couple of days later saying, yes, this is correct. So if you are unsure, just reach out to the provider, and obviously if they don't get back to you, if they give you a convoluted answer, that's a red flag and it might not be a provider you want to use. if in doubt, just try and contact the provider either through their website, give them a call. If not, try their social media. Just a few ways you can sort of, I guess, try and find out all the fees you're paying. Because as I mentioned a few times, the lower fees we pay, the more money we have compounding, and then the more we end up in the long term. So I'm going to leave it here. Thank you very much for watching this workplace pension video. I'm obviously still learning as well, and I'm not completely clued up on all the different workplace pensions available. But yeah, that's where I'm going to wrap up this workplace pension video. I hope it's been helpful. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments, how your workplace pension works, what you're investing into, what your employer match is. Let me know. And if not, I will see you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching.